Welcome back, everyone. You know you guys always send us the most interesting stuff, and this time is no different. This time it's all about achievement. How we chase it, how we deal with all the pressure that comes with it.
And there's so much to unpack there. I mean, it really makes you think.
It does, and that's why for this deep dive, we're going deep, really deep, deeper than usual even. Your sources this time came to us as pasted text, so lots to go through.
And we want to pull out the most important pieces. What can we actually use to better understand ourselves? Not just what it feels like to reach a goal, but what we give up along the way. What are the hidden costs of always striving for more? And how do we build up the strength inside?
Yeah, exactly. And right away, something jumped out at me from all this material is this weird push and pull. Like we work so hard to achieve something, a promotion at work, hitting a personal best in the gym, but then it's like almost as soon as we get there, it's gone.
Poof.
Yeah, like it's never even happened.
Right.
And then we're just looking for the next thing to achieve.
That's so interesting. You almost wonder if it's like we're following someone else's plan. Have you ever felt that way? Like you hit a target, but then immediately you're looking for the next one before you can even enjoy the first one?
All the time.
Like the finish line just keeps moving.
Keeps moving.
No matter how fast you run, you can't catch it. It really makes you think, why do we do that?
Well, I think it's because from when we're kids, we get told that what we achieve is what makes us valuable. Good grades, awards, the big job title. It's like our whole world is built around these external markers.
And that's the really dangerous part. Because, and some of your sources really highlighted this, we can end up living a life that's not even ours. We chase things because we think they'll impress other people or because that's what society tells us success looks like. But do those things actually matter to us? Deep down, are those our goals or are they someone else's?
Right. And then you've got the story of this guy, Joe Ehrman, who played in the NFL. I mean, talk about achieving the dream, fame, money, the whole 9 yards. But he talks about how it left him empty.
Completely empty. And I think his story really exposes this lie that so many of us believe, the lie that if we just achieve enough, then we'll be worthy. But he had it all, and it still wasn't enough.
Yeah. I mean, you think that'd be it, right? Reach that level and you're set. But for him, it was when he started helping young athletes, like really mentoring them, focusing on who they were as people, that he finally felt like he was doing something meaningful. It wasn't about the wins and losses anymore. It was about making a real difference in their lives.
And that's such a powerful shift, isn't it? He went from chasing these external markers of success to something much deeper. And his story shows us how easy it is to get caught in this trap of more, more, more. It's like a treadmill that never stops because the standards are always increasing. You get the bigger title, and suddenly there's an even bigger one to aim for.
And more money, more recognition.
Yeah.
It never ends.
It never ends.
Mm-hmm.
So then how do we get off the treadmill?
Right. If we can't rely on those external things to make us feel good, what can we do?
Well, it starts by changing how we see things. We have to stop looking outside of ourselves for validation and start looking inward. It's about understanding who we are, what we value, and what truly gives us a sense of purpose. It's like building an internal compass that we can use to guide our decisions.
So instead of constantly thinking about what other people think or comparing ourselves to everyone else, we need to figure out what actually matters to us.
Exactly.
It's easier said than done, though, right? Because when you're always thinking about how you appear to others, it creates so much pressure.
So much pressure. It's like you're always on stage performing for an audience, and that pressure, it makes everything feel so high stakes, Like if you don't meet those expectations, you've failed.
Oh, and the fear of failing. It's paralyzing.
It can be. You end up second-guessing yourself, overthinking everything. But you know what? I think a lot of your sources would agree that the goal isn't to get rid of fear entirely. Fear is normal. It's human. The important thing is to learn how to work with it, how to move forward, even when you're scared.
So it's not about being fearless, it's about being courageous.
Exactly. And a lot of times that self-doubt, it comes from this you self-monitoring, Like we have this inner critic in our heads that's always evaluating us, comparing us to others. And the more energy we spend on that, the less we have to actually focus on what we're doing and build real confidence.
It's like having this judge living in your head, pointing out every little mistake.
Right. And when you look at people who perform at a high level, the ones who really thrive under pressure, they're not so worried about what other people think. They're more focused on the process, on mastering their craft, on actually doing the work. And there's something really freeing about that.
Yeah, it's like they're not distracted by all that outside noise. But speaking of noise, we also have to talk about the noise inside our own heads. Our own minds can be our biggest obstacles. The sources talk about these inner saboteurs.
Yeah. And they can really sabotage us. They might use different names for them, but it's the same idea. You've got the trickster, the critic, and sometimes they call it the monkey mind.
All right, let's break those down. So the trickster, that's the part of us that gets stuck in the past, right?
Yeah. It's that voice that keeps replaying your past mistakes, your failures, and it makes them seem way bigger than they actually were. It makes you afraid to try new things because you're convinced you'll just mess up again. Like, the past is doomed to repeat itself.
And then the critic. I think we all know that one.
Yeah.
That's the voice that's constantly putting us down.
That's the one. And it doesn't just help you improve. It takes any little flaw and turns it into proof that you're not good enough. It makes you feel ashamed, incapable.
And the monkey mind.
Oh, that one's a real troublemaker. That's the constant chatter, the thoughts that jump all over the place, makes it hard to focus, to make decisions. You feel overwhelmed even when things aren't that complicated.
Scattered.
Totally scattered. And it's interesting because some traditions, especially from Eastern philosophies, they see all this mental chatter as normal. It's just part of how the mind works. But that doesn't mean it's always helpful.
So how do we quiet the monkey mind? How do we deal with the trickster and the critic?
Well, the sources make it really clear. The first step is recognizing them. It's about becoming aware of what's happening in your own mind, what stories you're telling yourself.
So you're saying we need to start paying attention to those thoughts running in the background.
Exactly. Because once you can spot the trickster or the critic or that monkey mind jumping around, then you can start to challenge those thoughts and stop them from holding you back.
So, okay, we're starting to understand our minds a little better. But the sources also talk about this idea of shifting our focus. Instead of being obsessed with results, we should be looking at the effort we put in and how much we're growing along the way. How does that change how we deal with pressure?
Well, think about it this way. When your whole definition of success is based on the outcome, whether you get the promotion or you win the game, then failing feels like a personal attack. It makes you question your whole identity. But if you can shift your perspective and start valuing the effort, the learning, then failure becomes less about you as a person and more about feedback. It's a step on the path, not the end of the road.
It takes the sting out of it, right?
It does. And I think this guy, Lewis Gordon Pugh, who swam at the North Pole, he embodies this idea perfectly. I mean, talk about facing overwhelming obstacles. The physical challenge, the freezing water, the mental pressure, the fear of failure must have been incredible.
Yet he did it. And for him, it was about the mission. He was trying to raise awareness about climate change.
Exactly. And that purpose, that bigger goal, it was bigger than his own fear. It gave him the strength to keep going when things got tough. His success wasn't just about his physical ability. It was about his mental strength, his unwavering focus on that mission. He turned his fear into fuel.
So we need to find something that really matters to us, something bigger than ourselves, and then connect our efforts to that.
Exactly. And I think that's a good segue into talking about what your sources identified as some of the key characteristics of high performers. They talked about emotional commitment, perspective, and presence.
Let's take those one by one. So emotional commitment. That means you're all in, right? You're not just doing something for the applause. You genuinely care about it.
Absolutely. When you're driven by that passion, that deep sense of purpose, you're going to be much more likely to stick with it when things get tough. Setbacks become challenges to overcome, not reasons to quit. And the fear of failure, it loses its power when you're committed to something you truly value.
And then there's perspective. That's about seeing the bigger picture. Right.
It is. It's about not letting your current limitations or your past mistakes define you. It's about learning from your experiences, adapting your strategies, and always evolving. High performers, they don't see challenges as roadblocks. They see them as opportunities for growth.
They're always learning. Okay, and presence. What's that all about?
Presence is about being in the moment. It's about quieting all that mental chatter and focusing on the task at hand, trusting your abilities. And when you can do that, you can act decisively, even under pressure.
No hesitation.
No hesitation. You're just there, fully present.
But some of these sources also talk about how our ego can get in the way. That need for control, wanting to be recognized all the time, tying our self-worth to our achievement.
Oh yeah, the ego can really mess things up. It wants the spotlight, it wants the credit, and it hates failing. But the people who show real resilience, they're able to separate their sense of worth from those external outcomes. They focus on learning and growing, not just winning.
So it's about where we choose to put our attention. If it's all about me, my reputation, my fear of looking bad, then the anxiety takes over.
Absolutely. But if you can shift your focus outwards to something bigger than yourself, a meaningful goal, the pure joy of mastering a skill, then that's when fear starts to lose its grip.
Like the samurai meditating on death. That's a pretty extreme example, but it shows what happens when you shift your focus away from self-preservation.
It is extreme, but the idea is powerful. They were able to detach from their fear of death by focusing on something greater, their duty, their craft. And I think there's a lesson there for all of us.
And then there's Muggsy Bogues. I love his story, playing in the NBA when everyone said he was too short.
Amazing story. He didn't let his height define him. He focused on what he could control. His mental game, his work ethic, his emotional strength. He channeled his energy into becoming the best player he could be, despite the limitations everyone else saw.
So it seems like a big part of all of this is about learning to master our minds and our emotions. Like we're not just victims of our feelings.
Right. We can learn to manage our emotions, to change our mindset, instead of letting our circumstances dictate how we feel. And that's a skill, just like anything else.
But it's not just about our thoughts, right? Our bodies play a role too.
Oh, absolutely. Our physical state has a huge impact on our mental state. Simple things like posture and breathing can make a big difference in how confident and calm we feel. You know, taking slow, deep breaths can actually calm down your nervous system. And then there's visualization. Some of your sources probably talked about that.
Like mentally rehearsing for success. How does that work exactly?
Well, when you vividly imagine yourself successfully navigating a challenging situation, you're basically creating a mental blueprint for your brain. It's like practice for your mind and your nervous system. And that can make you feel more prepared and capable when you encounter similar situations in real life.
So it's like giving your brain a sneak peek of what's to come. And what about our beliefs? The things we believe about ourselves, even if we don't realize it.
Our beliefs are powerful. They act like filters, shaping how we see the world and what we think is possible for us. And our subconscious mind, it's always looking for ways to confirm those beliefs. So if we have limiting beliefs like, I'm not good enough or I always fail, then we're more likely to find evidence that supports those beliefs, even if it's not true.
Like that softball player, Calista Balco. She mentally rehearsed her at-bat against this pitcher who had always struck her out. She changed her belief, and she actually hit a home run off of her.
Exactly. She replaced that old story of failure with a new story of success. And there are specific techniques we can use to do this intentionally. Affirmations, visualization, anchoring, you've probably heard of those.
Remind me how those work again.
Sure. So affirmations are those positive statements you repeat to yourself, kind of like mantras, to reinforce the beliefs you want to have. Visualization is like creating a movie in your mind of yourself achieving your goals. And anchoring is about linking a physical action or a word with a feeling of confidence, so you can trigger that feeling whenever you need it.
So if you wanted to feel more confident before a presentation, you could practice anchoring by, say, squeezing your fist and thinking about a time when you felt really confident.
Exactly. And then when you're about to give the presentation, you squeeze your fist and you instantly access that feeling of confidence.
It's like having a secret weapon. But I guess the key is to practice these techniques regularly, right?
It is. It's not a one-time thing. It's about building new mental habits, rewiring your brain for resilience.
So we've talked about a lot of internal stuff, but what about those moments when the pressure's really on? Like, how do we stay present in those situations?
Yeah.
Captain Sully landing that plane on the Hudson, that's incredible.
Absolutely incredible. That's a perfect example of someone staying present under extreme pressure. He didn't panic. He didn't get caught up in the chaos. He stayed focused on what he needed to do to keep everyone safe.
But our natural tendency is to overthink,
Right.
to freak out.
It is. But overthinking doesn't help. In fact, it usually makes things worse. It clouds our judgment and prevents us from acting decisively. So the key is to simplify our thoughts, focus on the small details, what's right in front of us.
Ground yourself.
Ground yourself in the present moment. And also, we need to learn to see pressure differently, not as this scary monster that's going to crush us.
But as something that can actually help us.
Exactly. High performers, they often find that pressure actually heightens their focus, sharpens their senses, makes them even better. It's about channeling that energy, not letting it control you.
So we need to reframe pressure as a source of power, not something to be afraid of. And then there's this idea of constantly striving to improve and seeing failure as a learning opportunity. Like Alexander Karelin, the wrestler. He wasn't just naturally talented. He trained relentlessly.
He was all about pushing his limits, and the sources really emphasize this. It's that daily commitment to growth, that willingness to put in the work that's more important than natural talent in the long run.
It's not about the medals or the trophies. It's about the journey, the constant pursuit of mastery.
And that's where the real satisfaction comes from. You're not chasing external validation anymore. You're driven by the joy of improving, of becoming the best version of yourself. And high performers, they don't let failure destroy them. They look at what went wrong, figure out what they can learn from it, and then they adjust their approach. They embrace the struggle. They know it's part of the process.
And it seems like this applies to leadership too.
Absolutely. Good leaders create environments where people feel safe to grow, to experiment, to make mistakes, and learn from them. They foster a culture of continuous improvement. And there's a difference between trying to beat everyone else and trying to master your own skills. Like Ian Crocker, the swimmer, he fell out of love with the sport because he was so focused on winning. But then he rediscovered his passion when he shifted his focus to the technical aspects of swimming, the pure joy of perfecting his technique.
And he ended up swimming faster than ever before.
Exactly. That intrinsic motivation, that love of the craft, it leads to better performance and more fulfillment. So as we look at all these sources, it's clear that the biggest challenges we face often aren't the external pressures themselves, but how we respond to them internally. It's our fears, our self-doubt, the negative stories we tell ourselves that hold us back.
Yeah. True success, lasting success, comes from building up that resilience inside, from finding our purpose, and from embracing a growth mindset.
And for you listening, it really makes you think about how you define progress for yourself. Are you chasing those external markers of success? Or are you focused on something deeper, something more meaningful? And are you letting those internal saboteurs, the critic, the trickster, the monkey mind, control your story?
So here's something to consider, a little challenge for you. What's one small change you can make today? Maybe it's how you approach a difficult situation or how you think about what it means to succeed. What if you decided to prioritize your own personal growth and mastery over seeking approval from others? What would become possible if you consistently focused on cultivating that inner excellence?
Imagine the possibilities.